Tonight, he almost quit. Not because he was weak, not because he lacked talent, not because the dream was impossible, but because he was tired. Tired of trying, tired of failing, tired of being the only one who still believed. It was 2:17 in the morning. The room was dark, except for the cold light of a laptop screen. Bills were stacked on the desk. Rejection emails filled the inbox. The silence was loud. And in that silence, a dangerous thought whispered, "Maybe this is not for you." He leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling. He replayed every mistake, every missed opportunity, every person who said, "Be realistic," every friend who moved ahead, every family member who suggested a safer path. For a moment, quitting felt peaceful. No more pressure, no more expectations, no more disappointment, just comfort. And comfort is seductive. You to sleep. Comfort tells you to settle. Comfort tells you to accept average. But something inside him refused to die. A small voice, not loud, not dramatic, just steady. It asked one question: what if tomorrow changes everything? He laughed at himself. Tomorrow had not changed anything for years. Why would it change now? But then another question came. What if this pain is the price? What if this struggle is the tuition? What if this rejection is training? What if this loneliness is preparation? He thought about every story he had ever admired. Every successful person, every leader, every innovator, every athlete. None of them escaped the night of doubt. There is always a night when quitting feels smarter than continuing. But that night is a test of identity. Are you someone who tries, or are you someone who finishes? Up. He walked to the mirror, looked at himself. The face staring back looked exhausted, but the eyes were not empty. There was still fire. He realized something powerful. Success is not built in front of crowds. It is built in private battles. It is built in moments when nobody claps, when nobody believes, when nobody sees. This was that moment, the night he almost gave up. He thought about how far he had already come. Not financially, not publicly, but mentally. He was stronger than the version of himself from 5 years ago. More disciplined, more focused, more aware. Growth is invisible until it is undeniable. And most people quit during the invisible stage. They quit when progress is happening underground. Just like roots. Before a tree grows tall, it grows deep. Maybe this was depth season. Maybe this was root season. Desk. Closed the rejection emails. Opened his project. His hands were shaking, not from fear, but from decision. He decided that quitting was not an option tonight. Not because he felt confident, but because he felt committed, and commitment is more powerful than motivation. Motivation is emotional. Commitment is contractual. Motivation shows up when you feel good. Commitment shows up when you feel nothing. That night he did not feel inspired. He felt responsible. Responsible for his potential. Responsible for the younger version of himself who once dreamed without limits. Responsible for the future version of himself who was counting on this decision. He realized something most people never understand. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your standards. And quitting would lower his standard. So he worked brilliantly, just consistently. One more email, one more revision, one more practice session, one more attempt. Outside, the world was asleep, but inside him, something was waking up. Resilience is not loud. It does not announce itself. It quietly rebuilds you. Failure had carved him. Rejection had shaped him. Pressure had strengthened him. And suddenly, he saw his struggle differently. It was not proof that he was incapable. It was proof that he was in the arena. You only get bruised when you step into the fight. Most people criticize from the sidelines. Few are willing to bleed for a dream. He chose to bleed. Hours passed. The sky slowly shifted from black to dark blue. Dawn was approaching, and with it came clarity. The problem was never the difficulty. The problem was his expectation of speed. He wanted success fast. Greatness is slow. Greatness is boring, repetitive, demanding. It asks you to show up when it is inconvenient. It asks you to continue when it is painful. It asks you to believe when there is no evidence. That night he stopped chasing excitement and started choosing discipline. Excitement fades. Discipline compounds. He wrote a sentence on a piece of paper. I will not quit on myself. He taped it above his desk. Not for the world, not for social media, not for validation, but as a private contract. Because the real battle was never external. It was internal. Doubt versus belief, fear versus faith, comfort versus growth, and growth always requires discomfort. He understood something else. If you quit once, when it gets hard, you teach your brain that quitting is relief. But if you push through once, you teach your brain that struggle is survivable. That night, he retrained his mind. He did not suddenly become successful. He did not suddenly become rich. He did not suddenly receive recognition. But he became unbreakable. And that was more valuable. Weeks later, nothing dramatic had changed. But he had. His work was sharper. His focus was deeper. His patience was stronger. And then one small win arrived. Not life-changing, not viral, not massive, but real. A door cracked open. An opportunity appeared. And because he had not quit, he was ready. Most people miss their breakthrough, not because it never comes, but because they leave too early. They abandon the field. They walk away one night before the breakthrough. He almost did. Almost. That word matters. Almost quit. Almost surrendered. Almost accepted average. But almost is not the same as did. Decision. On one quiet night, in one dark room, with no audience, changed the trajectory of his life. Years later, people would call him lucky. They would say he had talent, connections, timing. They would not see the night he almost gave up. They would not see the tears, the doubt, the fear, the exhaustion. But that night was the foundation. Because character is forged in private. If you are in your night right now, if you are staring at your ceiling, if you are questioning your path, if you are tired beyond words, listen carefully. This might be your defining moment. Not the award, not the applause, not the celebration, but the decision to stay, the decision to fight, the decision to try one more time. You do not need certainty, you need courage. You do not need guarantees, you need grit. Everyone to believe. You just need to refuse to quit. Pain is temporary. Regret lasts longer. Imagine waking up 5 years from now knowing you stopped because it was hard. Now imagine waking up 5 years from now grateful you endured. The difference between those futures is one decision. Tonight, the night you almost gave up. So if you are tired, rest, but do not quit. If you are discouraged, reflect, but do not quit. If you are doubting, question, but do not quit. Because the version of you who succeeds is built by the version of you who refuses to surrender. This is not the end of your story. This is the middle. And the middle is messy. But messy is where strength grows. Messy is where clarity forms. Messy is where resilience is born. One day you will look back at this season, and you will not be ashamed of how close you came to quitting. Stayed, the night he almost gave up, was the night he decided, I will suffer if I must. I will struggle if I have to. I will fail if I need to. But I will not quit. And that decision made all the difference.